our distinguished speaker for today, Manoj Chigal, and my dear colleague, Satish Shenoy, and to all the wonderful participants who are going to watch this video webinar, as they're watching it. Summer Audit brings yet another episode of Chief Auditor series. And Satish and I thought, we should embark on a journey to speak to, deliberate, interact with chief auditors, academics, regulators in the field of internal audit, because this will become a great ecosystem sort of thing, or great recordings which are available, which can be viewed by the internal audit fraternity, students, chief auditors, teams across the world, and gain from this series, And there has been a lot of debate on, the various webinars which are there, and they have been much appreciated by people. So today, again, we have a very distinguished speaker, Manoj Chigal. I will formally introduce him like we introduce all our distinguished speakers. He has kindly consented to be with us today. So I'll quickly introduce him. Manoj started his journey in 2003 with PwC. He was manager risk advisory for India and UK. There he was in charge, for risk audit, SOX, forensics, project management, people leadership basics. 2009 he joined Sopra Steria, where he was VP, Vice President, Audit and Shared Services, looking at India and France, audit leadership, establishing function and developing people, shared services, finance, and global exposure. From there, in 2012, he moved to Whirlpool. In Whirlpool, he became the Global Director, Audit and Finance, and he was in charge for US, China, India. Of course, he had a lot of US exposure, US GAAP, global leadership, board and audit committee reporting, mergers, acquisition, technology audit and risk, compliance risk, investigations, China acquisition and integration, leading large global teams and partnering. So that's the skill level required, and that's the portfolio which he handled. And 2021, I think he moved to DIAGEO, a world major in alcoholic beverages. He's the director, global audit and risk, looking after India, in charge of the global beverages sector, managing risk in highly regulated environment, because as we all know, alcohol is a highly regulated environment. A very difficult environment for organizations. He's the global audit and risk transformation. He looks after that, and partnering and enabling business in such a challenging environment. So over to you, Manoj, please.
Awesome. So first of all, good evening, everybody, and good evening to Deepjee and Satish, and thank you so much for having me here. I've been tracking all the good work you've been doing. I've been seeing a lot of videos, obviously bring a lot of good value. And then what's unique for me is that it's been one of its kind. I've not seen this kind of initiative earlier, and absolutely great initiative. And also I want to thank both of you for allowing me to be a bit more, let's say, innovative in how I want to have this session, So just to share a little bit of structure of what I want to do, instead of sharing and walking through all that we are doing at DIAGEO or even my previous experiences, I actually wanted to share 4 stories. And some of them I saw collected over my career, over my life. Some of them could be personal also. And then somewhere I would try to connect them to our core accountabilities, not just as a chief audit executive, but as auditors as well. And then we have the privilege of, having both of you on the call. I cannot stop the call without having a little bit of conversation on those 3-4 topics I'll talk about. So really the idea is to have an open conversation. And as we were planning this session, we all talked about having fun along the way. And that's really what I'm looking to get out of this session. Obviously share a little bit of things from my side, but obviously, hear from your side as well, and have a good chat. So on that, let me share my screen. I don't have a whole lot of slides, but I have only 2 or 3. First, to give a little more color into my journey so far. And I think Deepjee has already covered a part of it. So I would be fairly quick on this, and then quickly jump onto the key topics I would want to talk about. Sounds good?
Absolutely.
Excellent. So in terms of my journey, I started my career with PricewaterhouseCoopers. I was in their risk advisory services. Largely, I was based in the north of India, so Gurgaon, Delhi were the areas where I worked on. And I got an opportunity to be on a secondment in UK as well. I worked for the insurance company Prudential. So first big sort of assignment outside of India, and was a really good experience that made me learn a few things about the culture as well. So I worked with Price for about 7 years. Sopra Steria, shorter stint, but very, very close to my heart, because first time in my career, I got the opportunity to build a team and also learn few skills along the way on that. And since that time, that is actually the part of the job that I enjoy the most. So really short period, I looked at India, did a short stint, in France as well, basically, traveling back and forth very frequently. Whirlpool was the organization, worked for about 8 years, applied a lot of the skills that I learned, in the first 10, 11 years, but then the role was quite expanded as well. So I was quite challenged on some of the areas and with a lot of learning. So my role started again in India, then got expanded to Asia Pacific. And then I was based in Michigan, US for the last 5 years before I decided to come back to India and join DIAGEO. Again, it's been 1 year at DIAGEO so far, but very, very interesting 1 year. I also wanted to just take a minute to share what is that drove me towards DIAGEO. So there's a supply chain footprint overall we have at DIAGEO. So obviously the largest alcobev company globally. What I'm sharing here is the India footprint. And at the time DIAGEO did the acquisition in India, we had about 90 plants all across India. So there's a lot of rationalization happening at the moment. We are down to about 48, driving efficiencies and consolidating operations and so on. And we do sort of plan to rationalize a bit more, but that's a number, where we are. 61,000 retail outlets, so obviously huge retail presence, quite a number of depots as well. The thing that really strikes me on this particular slide is that in the entire value chain, when our products are made and before they're delivered to the consumer, there are about 200,000 statutory checks and licenses and all these kind of steps, are there in the process. That just boggles my mind. And I've not really worked for a company where regulatory was such a huge part of the business. And with regulation comes risk. And that is where I felt very strongly that, hey, here's an environment where one, I can learn and probably add value and help manage risk as well. So just wanted to give a little bit of color on what brought me to DIAGEO. Now, here is the slide where we will spend hopefully the next 25 odd minutes. And as I said, there are 4 themes I've brought out here. And I do hope that the viewers, listeners, will be able to connect the dots in terms of how they are relevant for any audit function as well. So without wasting time, let me dive into the first story, and then we will start unpacking them with Deepjee and with Satish as well. So the first story I want to share is on entertaining different perspectives. Now, this story is about a little boy named Rajat. And it's actually quite a popular story. You might have heard this. The algebra math class is going on, and the teacher is teaching some basic addition skills to the kids. So the teacher asked a very basic question that, Rajat, imagine that I give you 2 apples, and then I give you 2 apples more. How many apples would you have? And Rajat replies that I'll have 5 apples. And I say, he's a little disappointed that he got the answer wrong. And he asked again, this time visually, that imagine I give you, look at my fingers, right? I give you 2 apples and I give you 2 apples more. How many do we have now? He again says 5. So he thinks that probably I need to reach out to Rajat at some emotional connect level. So he asks, okay, forget about apple. Tell me, what is your favorite fruit? And Rajat replies that I love strawberries. And then he asks again, okay, if I give you 2 strawberries and then 2 strawberries more, how many strawberries would you have? And this time Rajat replies 4. So teacher, obviously is quite happy with that achievement, but he wants to go back. He asks again, okay, now Now tell me, if I give you 2 apples and then 2 apples more, how many apples would you have? And he again says 5. And then he replies, because I have 1 apple in my bag. And uh, very, very small, simple story. But when I heard it somewhere, and it always stayed with me, because whenever we meet people and interact with people who have slightly different perspective compared to what we have, or who disagree with our ideas, the first reflection or reaction we have is that we are right and they are wrong. So really the provocation I have for the group here is, how can we really entertain the idea that the other perspective could be the right one? How can we sort of open our mind from that point of view? And also, I read this line somewhere, that mark of an intelligent person is the ability to entertain an idea without accepting it, right? So, and that's really the point that I'm trying to make with this particular story. And I think in our audit work, I'm sure that if I look back at even today, I probably had 4 conversations with different people, my business partners, where my perspective was very different from theirs. And that is the reason this is a concept that kind of underpins the work I do on a day-by-day basis, to make sure that I always keep an open mind. And that is where I wanted to include this first story on entertaining different perspectives. Now, as I promised again, I would not be the only one speaking here. So I just wanted to give this very quick prompt to Deepjee, you, and Satish, you, to reflect on this and just share your experience. What is your take on this, and how you experience this sort of different perspective aspect through your career?
I think I'll go first, Satish. What you said is very apt, Manoj. Entertain different perspectives, and you start realizing, I'll not answer it. There's no straight answer for it. What I would say is that as you grow in the profession, as you travel across the world, as you meet different cultures, as you go across the geography and meet different kinds of people from different backgrounds, as you interact with people from different strata in your society, you start appreciating different perspectives, because each person comes, the perspective gets developed based on the environment, or on how a person has been built, how a person has taken his journey. So as you slowly travel, as you see more situations, as you see more, meet more of people, processes, organizations, as your landscape broadens, as your vision broadens, you start entertaining different perspectives, because you say the end goal may be the same, but the perspective may be different. So that happens over a period of time, and then you wish that it should have happened to you much earlier. You should have thought about it 20 years back, because then you can think of various stories or various incidents which happened in your career, in your life, which you said, I should have entertained different perspectives, and the result would have been different. So, it's slowly, it evolves over a period of time. So I think there is a need to inculcate this type of thing in teams. As Manoj, you rightly said, people development. So you need to start appreciating different perspectives, and you need to have your team start appreciating different perspectives to reach at a common goal.
Right.
Satish.
Perfect. I think, Manoj, you really picked up a very, very important aspect of not only auditing, but I think of life as well.
Yes.
It's all about perspectives. I mean, when we say as auditors, we say that something is right or something is wrong or something has not been done properly. I think it's very important that we understand the perspective. You've really taken me back a very, very long way. I remember my first assignment, very first assignment, and I'm talking about now 35 years ago, 38 years ago. I was working in one company called Hindustan Petroleum, which is, of course, a very big monolith today. But when, and I raised some as an auditor, I raised some, few things about some very small things as my small mind at that point in time raised. And my boss, he was a guy who had come from the business, and he was my manager, and he just pulled my hand, and he took me to that place where those invoices, I raised some points about invoices and things like that, and he made me sit there in that kiosk where those invoices were being made. And 38 years ago, my friend, it was being done manually, and he was writing a few things and whatever. And he made me sit there, and he said, Satish, you just sit here for 1 hour. Don't do anything. Don't do anything. You just sit here for 1 hour. And he wasn't around when for that hour. And while in that hour, I saw all the kind of activities that were happening, and the pressure on that guy at that minute. There was so many things happening simultaneously. And after that 1 hour of sitting there, my perspective changed. And I said, Arey, yaar, what am I, really pointing out, and what am I saying? Not that I'm saying that, mistakes are pardoned or anything, but I must understand the perspective of the other person.
Awesome.
I must understand the perspective. No problem. I mean, you're allowed, your job is to find out things that have deviated from the existing process and so on and so forth. But management also doesn't mind if there are deviations, so long as it is not done intentionally.
Yeah.
And if there is any need for, changing, for if the change in the process or the deviations are so big, then your recommendation is not to talk about the deviation, but to ensure, to work with the management to ensure that the processes are changed. So the perspective is, I think, very, very, very important from in an auditor's mindset. And I mean, thanks for bringing this out so well, Manoj. Uh, there's no two opinions.
Yeah.
That we must understand the perspectives. We may have our ways of doing things, but yes, perspectives are important, not only in auditing, but also in life.
Oh, thank you so much, Satish ji, for
Brilliant.
sharing that that great story. Also exercising a little bit of empathy. And Deepjee, thank you so much for your thoughts as well on this.
I think before Manoj, we would like you to sum this up, but I have one instance, and I can share this openly in this forum. I was in Angola, and I was talking to the auditor from the Supreme Audit Association there, the CAG, like counterpart of CAG in Angola.
Right.
And he became a great friend, and he took me around. And, his perspective was that he would like to set up in US also, so that maybe, he has something in the US, something goes wrong with the country, he may fly to there. And, and when we are going in the car, he stopped at a particular junction, and he said, till 15 years back, we had this civil war. And he said, I and my father were crossing the street, and my father was shot dead, at this street, and many more incidents, in the country, where he took me and he said, we are rebuilding and we are doing this. But what, his thought pattern, the risk factor which he thought, his thought pattern, everything emanated from that background,
Yeah.
He had a different perspective of life, a different perspective of society, and he was a very mature, sober, a diligent auditor. So his thought pattern and his way of thinking was absolutely different from anybody else I had met.
Excellent story, Deepjee. I think just listening to both of you, I feel that we're going to have fun in the remaining 30-35 minutes that we have.
Your take, Manoj, on this particular aspect.
No, I absolutely agree. I mean, my take is that we say very often, we say that we understand where you're coming from, right? These almost have become buzzwords, right? But do we really, right? And how open a mind we have to be able to really entertain an idea without, even if we decide not to accept it at that level, but still openly entertaining that is a really important thing. And as Satish ji said, it's not just about auditing. I think it's a much broader topic. It's about the entire life, even in our personal relationships and so on.
Absolutely.
Excellent. So with that, let me move on to the second one, which is the positive pushback. And the story that I'm sharing on this one is actually a historical story. I read it in some book. I don't remember the name of the book itself now. Story goes back to 1945. So right after World War II, there was a conference that took place in a place called Yalta, and which now I think geographically is a part of what we call Crimea now. And the purpose of the conference was basically for European countries and US to get together and see what is going to be the post-war dynamic with all the damage and all atrocities, etc., that took place. And basically agrees on terms and conditions to make sure that there's a sustained peace after that. Now, the conference ran for a number of days, and all the people who were at the conference, when the conference ended, they walked away with this idea that Joseph Stalin is a real gentleman. He listens to reason. He is very, very flexible, very agreeable, accept most of the things that you put as proposals in terms of terms and conditions. On the other side, Churchill is actually the most difficult person on the earth to deal with. You know, he would not agree to anything. He will keep pushing back. He would do endless argument on different topics and so on. So if anybody who is sort of watching the entire proceeding, this is a kind of learning, or this is the kind of reflection they will walk away with. Now, that's on the surface. The reason behind this kind of reflection is because Stalin agreed to everything because he never had any real intention to implement all that was being signed up. Right? He was with this mindset, whatever you want me to sign, I'll sign, but I will do what I have to do. On the other hand, Churchill had this mindset that he wanted to honor all the commitments with all the impact of war and everything. And that is the reason he was so picky, and he was going into so much details, and he was doing so much pushback and so on. The reason I took this topic is that pushback from the management is a huge topic that we all auditors talk about, quite passionate about all the time and all. The point that I'm trying to bring is, if we all have faced Stalins and Churchills in our life multiple times, right? But sometimes we mistake Churchills for Stalins and Stalins for Churchill. If someone is pushing back big time, I think we need to kind of pause and ask ourselves that maybe there's something good behind this, and this person is disagreeing because they care, and it's their way to commit. And this, again, the other angle on this is this topic of disagreeing and committing is also a behavior that's sort of coming up, a lot now, which is again the other point, within this story only I wanted to make, that we as auditors gets invited to consult on different projects which are going on and so on. And I believe that it's our job to hold the tension and disagree. One option is that we go sit in the meetings, keep nodding, keep listening, and then come back. But at times, from our point of view, we do need to disrupt, we do need to disagree. And that is how we commit to the organizations that we work for. That is how we add value. So this is a story I wanted to share. I'll do a quick pause to see if either of you would like to add something or share any reflection.
I think this story has just reminded me of one more incident. Of course, not again 35 years ago, but something more recent. I don't want to name the company. I don't want to name the person. There's no way I will do that. But I was in the audit committee meeting, and there was a point audit issue which I raised. And on the fly, our CFO went on to elucidate about something that about some issue that I had raised, and he went on to explain from his perspective. I'm bordering around the different perspective also, but he went on to explain how and probably unnecessary, if I have to say. He went on to explain that how it is happening in SAP, and he just went on a tangent, and he said something. And at that point, I knew that what he was saying was wrong, and I wanted to kind of bring the conversation back into the right perspective. And at that time, I said that may I at this point say something, and I explained the entire issue. I said that while XYZ said what he said, but our CFO said this, but this is how it really happens on the ground situation. But I'm sure our CFO would have had some perspective to say that. But on the ground level, this is how it happens, and this is how the system has been designed, and this is the lacuna that I was really talking about. And I mean, it was after some time I was really thinking that whether I did the right thing in trying to contradict what the CFO said, or but it was important because I had to bring the correct issue on the table rather than getting deviated at the in the meeting. And of course, the CFO accepted it at that point in time. He said, "Yeah, I do understand what Satish is coming from, because he's the guy who's been, going through all the records of the company." And then he, of course, took it in a very positive. And the company's culture was fantastic. Means it was a fantastic working culture over there, where every idea or anything that is said was definitely accepted. It was not just thrown out. So the culture was good, and that's what helped me and prompted me to say what I said. And more important than all this that happened in the meeting, obviously the audit committee also was very happy that I gave this perspective. And after the meeting was over, I just went into the CFO's room, and I just told him, "I'm sorry that I had to contradict you, and I had to say something which was absolutely opposite to what you said, but I just had to bring the right perspective." And at that time, he said, "Satish, you did the right thing. And that's what you're here for. And that's what you're here for." I think these were golden words. He said, "You did the right thing. You said the right thing. You said it in the right way." And I think that particular aspect of our work is very important. That it's not important what you say, but it's important how you say it.
Yeah.
And this aspect came out very, very clearly. He said that you brought it out so well. You brought out the right perspective, and that is your job. So don't worry about contradictions. But I must say that you handled it well. So it was a win-win situation. It helped to bring the right perspective. But this positive pushback is something that an auditor in a good environment should always be mindful of. And this is what I think contributes to the positive environment. I think we are not only takers of the environment. I think we must be also givers to the environment.
Yeah.
It's only then that the positivity increases all around. You just, as I say, in a society, you just can't just say that, we are a clean society. We must also contribute to the cleanliness around. I can't muck the place and expect the government to clean it. I can't expect people to muck the place and expect that the government will come and. So I must contribute in a very positive way, and I think this aspect of our job is something which is very important. We may find out mistakes, we may find out something which has not gone the right way, but they say "Jor ka dhakka dheere se." What is said is more important. It is more important how it is said. What is the way in which it is put forth on the table, and that aspect is I think unforgiving. It gives so much. It blends. It really enhances the quality and the quantity of the work. This has been my life lesson for me through my life. That
Great
you must
example.
bring it. You
Great
must bring
example,
it up.
Satish. I think your tagline that we are also a contributor of the environment, I think is a
Yes.
very, very impactful one. And sometimes we could think that what we can do, right? It's a huge organization, but I think we don't realize that the voice we have, right? In our kind of profession, we have a huge voice. And I didn't realize till the time one of my business partner that, by the way, we used to fight a lot on in Soprasteria, he made this comment in one of the calls that, Manoj, you probably don't realize the voice. And when people read your report, they apply certain kind of importance on this, which I don't know if you realize. And then he was right. I actually never really thought about it from that point of view. And that made you feel about the responsibility that comes with the work that we do and so on. So no, great thought shared. Thank you so much, both of you. And let me talk about the third one, which actually is my favorite one topic that I wanted to share. which is on reporting truth, not facts. So the story actually goes back to early 90s, and the story relates to Pope from Vatican. And he actually was invited by the mayor of New York to visit, right, for a trip. And it was the first time, and he was quite happy to go, but at the same time very nervous, because he's always heard of, all these rough things about American journalists. They have a little bit of a gotcha attitude. They ask, tough questions, and freedom of press in the US and stuff like that. So he was a little jittery about that. So Vatican actually organized a media expert to coach the Pope that these are the do's and don'ts when you make the visit. Now, the media expert talked about a lot of things, but there was one golden rule that the expert shared with the Pope, that no matter what, never answer a question in yes or no. Because the moment you do that, because that means that you are taking a very clear position, they will turn and twist and basically use that against you. So just navigate, don't answer the question in yes or no. That's the one thing you need to keep in mind. If you forget everything else that I said, it's okay. Just to keep that one thing in mind. So Pope is feeling it by that point in time, feeling quite good about, the coaching, etc., feeling really good. So eventually the plane lands, and, as he's coming out, he sees that there are a lot of dignitaries from mayor's office and stuff like that. He goes there, greetings and so on. And the moment he crossed that red carpet, he actually sees that there are 8-10 journalists who are already standing there waiting for him to come out. Now, obviously feeling a little jittery, but at the same time quietly feeling confident also. So he reaches the journalist, stops, says hello politely. And the first question that the journalist asked Pope is that, would you like to go to the nudist bars in New York? That's the first question they asked me. Now, absolutely shocked, right? He was not there in any coaching or anything, and he's completely shocked. And then his reflex on that is to say absolutely no, right? I mean, that's the reflex that he has. And but he thinks about the golden rule that is being told to him. I can't answer in yes or no. So he thinks a little bit, and then in that split second, he comes up with a line to say, where are the nudist bars in New York? Right? And he laughs it off. He kind of laughs and say, where are the nudist bars in New York? And then the situation environment becomes a little light. Everybody laughs, and he moves on. And as he's in his limousine and going to the hotel, he's feeling quite good that it was a very tough question, but I did pretty good in navigating this. Goes there very tired, sleep, wakes up in the next morning, open the New York Times.
Headline.
And the headline says, the first thing Pope asked,
where are you?
After landing in New York, is where are the nudist bars in New York? Now I think
it's a truth which is reported but not a fact.
Or the other way around, Deepjee. I think
or the other way around.
Yeah,
it's a fact reported but not the truth.
Right, it's a fact reported but not the truth. And I read this somewhere, and I thought that, hey, it's quite relevant for our work also. Many a times we report, and Satish, your example where the person made you sit, I think is actually a good example of this, right? We are good with facts, but are we able to elevate our understanding of the situation to a level where we understand all the context and everything, and based on that, able to give a point of view that is balanced, right? So there are a lot of sort of angles of this, sizing the things in the right way, applying balance in what we are doing. And by doing that, we built a certain partnering, right? So how can we sort of keep moving from this fact-based sort of reporting or understanding to elevating it to the level of truth is a concept or the point that I was trying to make. So let me stop here.
I think Manoj, Satish and I would give this a pass and would ask you to elaborate on this particular thing and move on to the fourth one.
Yeah,
Yes, we agree to what you said, but maybe you
Absolutely.
could give one or two examples, or maybe you can deliberate on it further and explain. How do you move from facts to truth, or how do you look at the facts, overall facts, and maybe the teams have missed out something, or maybe you have missed out something. So how do you then report, and what happens?
yeah, absolutely. I think it's about in our kind of work. I'll give two examples, right? One,
Yes.
for our work, I think it's about understanding the broader context instead of just looking at the samples that got tested or what has been thrown by the data analytics based checks, etc., that we are doing, to really pause and reflect the background, what's really happening in the department, what has been the recent change, what is the real risk that we are talking about, here, what is the possibility of materialization of that risk. And that's very often it comes when we talk about regulatory risk. Now our regulations are so complicated. For everything, there's a regulation, right?
Yeah.
But rather than marking something as a very high risk, because there's a regulation and you could have a 200 day per day fine on something, how many times do we ask the question that, okay, the law is fine, but what is the precedent? Does the authority actually go after these small kind of cases, and what is the real level of exposure? And then understanding that, and based on that, coming up with a point of view, uh, is the point that I was trying to make from this particular point. In the other way, right? If I talk, let's say, in the esoteric sense, or in somewhat of a spiritual sense, right? Facts are like the music or the lyrics that we put on a sheet of paper, right? But when the musician or the singer put their heart and soul into it and present a performance to the audience, that is the truth, right? And how can we interpret or reinterpret that from the point of view of audit, is the point, or the provocation I was trying to.
Absolutely,
Manoj,
absolutely.
absolutely. But Manoj, one question to you again.
Yeah.
Point well taken. But on behalf of the audience, I'm asking you this question.
Yeah.
When you're moving away from facts, when you're talking about putting a soul out, or looking at the environment and looking at other things before you report, are you not becoming more subjective rather than objective? And in case it is misinterpreted, will it not backfire, or will it not backfire on the organization per se? Because it may not have been interpreted properly. So, again, there are pros and cons for this particular thing. So what is your take on that?
Absolutely. And Deepjee, good that you asked that question, because I was going to add this, that it's not that this particular thought process or mindset is without its limits, right? And on the practical side, on the other side, I would also say that we are always asked to consider too many factors, right? And sometimes we also need to be dispassionate and say that we need to go back to the facts, right? So if we say that I do reporting based on fact, is that a wrong thing to say? No, it's not wrong. I think they both are right in their own sort of thought process. We need to find what kind of approach work for what situation, and need to be open and aware of both the aspects, is the point I would try to say. But your point is absolutely right. I think it's not a carte blanche that everything we report, because honestly, if you ask me, I've been doing this for the last 18-20 years. There hasn't been a single finding I reported where there was not a very good reason that it could actually never be prevented, right? There are always thousands of reasons. So to what extent we bake that into this concept of fact and truth that I talked about is the judgment we need to apply. And that's what make our job quite rich also, right? It's not 2 plus 2 is not equal to 4, like in the first story. It's sometimes it's 5, is sometimes it's 7. And we just need to, with our experience and I think a little bit of hope, we just need to land, right, what it needs to be this time.
I think,
With
Manoj,
experience and a little bit of hope, you said.
yes,
Great.
yes. Manoj, you raised so many issues, so many soft issues of auditing in this, because it's all about judgment, it's all about perspective, it's all about business understanding. If you ask me, one of the skills that is very much coming to the fore for auditors is to understand the business, to understand the perspective. I'm not saying that we should understand the business so much that we start doing exactly what the business is doing and forgive all mistakes and overlook all kinds of deviations. No, not for the moment. I'm saying that. But as auditors, we must understand their perspective. And the first point that you made about entertaining different perspectives was a top of the mountain kind of a aspect. And the positive pushback and the report truth or not facts. All those things emanate from that only. But yes, it is very important for us to understand what are we saying. I remember in one audit, and I was the auditee. I was the auditor, and one of my teammates was all over the place. He was talking about something and something and something, and I was also guilty of being part of it. And one of the auditees just started singing the song. Ye kya hua, kab hua, kaise hua. He that song. After that, I heard the actual lyrics, and it really gave me an audit lesson. What happened, how it happened, why it happened, kaise hua, kab hua, kyun hua. I think those are the questions that we need to answer. And at that time, the truth, the fact, the perspective, the understanding, the all of those things, the negotiation skill of what to report, how difficult it is, how important it is, and the practicality of implementation. I think if these perspectives are brought into our work, even a small observation can be brilliantly brought out in our audit reports. I'm not talking about small order observations and big observations, but our impact that we need to make, and that is important from our perspective. We spend so much time off the business in when we do our work, that we must be ultimately help the business. I think this aspect I thought I need to bring out.
Very true.
Absolutely.
And Deepjee, I really liked your question and your challenge on this, because you're right. I mean, we have to maintain a certain balance on that also, because going too much on the other side will again not help us, and that's what makes our job quite exciting.
Absolutely.
So the last one is actually, I earlier talked about developing people, talent, and so on. So the last point I have is about that topic, and it's actually a personal story. It's a story about my little daughter. I have two daughters, so it's a story about the little one. So the earlier house where we lived, we had a decent sized backyard. So quite often on the weekend, otherwise, I would be working in the backyard, cutting grass, planting flowers, those kind of things. And the door that we used to use to go to the backyard, it had a certain latch that the moment you go out, you shut the door, it locks from inside. So very often I would be stuck outside and I would be shouting for someone to come and open the door. And every time I used to do that, my little one, who was like 3 years, probably 3.5 at that time, she was so motivated to come running and beat everybody else to the door and open the door for me. And it was quite amusing for me that why such a, whatever she was watching a favorite show on the TV. The moment I would shout, she would run and open the door. And few months later, she stopped coming. She was not excited anymore on that, and it kind of made me even more curious. So one day I just took her around. I asked her name is Mrinmay. I asked her, so earlier you were very excited about opening the door for me. What happened? Why you don't open? Now, young kids are not very articulate, but what she basically replied is that it's easy for her now. She gained some height, 2 inches or something, and then she could easily reach. Earlier, she would be standing on the edge of her toes and stretching literally, and was very excited. And then it's a very small thing, but it kind of made me think that it's quite true with all of us. And then engagement, particularly post-COVID and so on, topic for the organization. And I really believe that setting a high bar and stretching people in terms of the content of their job is actually the biggest tool we have to engage people. Yes, fun at work, and I do believe a little bit of safety net is also goes a long way. But really, this is a big one for me, and not something that I always thought about through my life and career, but something I more picked up in the last 4-5 months on how strong a tool this could be to motivate people in terms of setting a high bar and making them sort of grow through their career as well. So that's the last one that I wanted to share. Let me pause and get your quick thoughts. Thoughts on this.
I think no doubt about this. So I think I would let this pass you. There's no doubt that you have to set your bar high and continuously evolve. Satish.
No, true, absolutely. Because no professional, any professional, doesn't rest just after doing a great work, because the professional is expected to continuously churn. I mean, there is nothing like I did a great job, now I can relax. That doing a great job itself is setting up another standard. Like if Sachin comes to bat, there is an expectation that he'll score a century. I remember when Gavaskar used to come to bat and he scores the first run, they used to say that he's 99 short of a century.
Yeah.
That was the expectation from Sunil Gavaskar, that he's 99 short of a century. And I think our work, brings about such kind of expectation. Many times we crib that we get so much of work, we have to, any work that comes, it comes to me, I have to do so much. It comes to you because management or somebody who is giving you that work has that confidence that this work will be done. So it's absolutely important. There is no two questions about that. We must set our standards very high and always strive to achieve it. There's no two questions about it.
There's one more thought to this. I'll just quickly add, because I know Manoj has an appointment today, but I'll quickly add. Somebody told me 25 years back that you take a bus every day in the morning at 9 a.m. The bus goes for 5 stops, you get down, and after few days, few months and few years, you don't notice anything around you. So what you have to do is, you don't take that bus, you take an auto, or you ride a cycle, or you do something different. Your awareness will go up. You'll start observing things around you because you take it as a given, because when you are following the same route every day. So I think in life, as you set your bar high, you also need to do different things, because that will make you a different person. That will bring about a change in awareness for you, and that will add on to what you're doing in life as a person and as a professional. So I think again, Peter Drucker has said that other than the work that you do, every 3 or 4 years, you pick up a hobby, maybe studying art or, studying something different from your work. And that'll maybe the left side brain will do, creative thinking, and you can do something more and you can become more aware. So, set the bar high and also do things differently.
Wonderful.
Manoj, I think today we can give you the last word, Satish. And of course, after that, Satish will conclude. So, Manoj,
yes,
all yours.
I will let one of you make the last word, but I just want to say, it was lovely chatting with both of you. We've not had a lot of interactions, but I'm not feeling like it's something very formal, right? It's a great open conversation, and I shared a few things from my side, but I feel that I'm taking quite a lot away as well with all the stories and your perspective that you shared. So thank you so much once again for having me, and thank you so much for being so open and sharing all your perspectives as well.
So just a minute of conclusion, Manoj, if you can close the presentation. I'll just take a minute. I know you have another meeting, and they must be waiting for you, I'm sure. But very brilliantly brought out, I think, 4 stories. I thought that in 4 stories, how will you bring out the perspectives? But such brilliant perspectives have been brought out. And first of all, understand different perspectives. Nothing in this life is only coming from one side of the coin. There are 2 sides, there are multiple sides, as you explained in that apple story. 2 + 2 is not 4, it's 5, because that guy already had 1 apple. Understand that. And the perspectives that you brought out was the concept that you have to understand perspectives. And in our audit reports, when we bring out different issues, it has to be understood in perspective. I mean, there is my story, there is his story, and then there is a truth. This is the second point that you brought out, was the positive pushback, that you must understand the intent. Just because somebody is going on denying what you are saying, you must understand his point of view. Maybe there is something that you missed out, and this is very, very, very important. Report truth, not facts. That this aspect of it has been brilliantly brought out in the story that you narrated. I don't want to get into the story again, but it was brilliantly brought out that you must be aware. You must understand the complete picture. Business understanding, I think, for auditors is becoming a very, very, very critical aspect of our part of our work. We must understand business and understand it properly, and not understand it so much that we become part of the business. Business partnering, we keep saying, and then we say that, okay, no, we must understand what is our role, what is the role of the business, and bring out those aspects very properly. Setting the bar high, that aspect of it is simply brilliant. And that innocence of that child, who said that now once it has become easy for me, it's over. Yeah, just yesterday there was a photo of in Vikhroli, that's very close to where I stay, of those beautiful flowers that have come out. Day in and day out I passed that road, but it never came to my eye until I saw it in the photo. And this morning, early morning, I got up and went to that place just to see those flowers, because it came in the. So as Deepjee said, you have to change your route once in a while to understand what different things are happening. You have to keep your eyes open. Your eyes are open. Of course, you're driving, your eyes are open, but you have to understand, you have to see. And that's the difference between, probably looking and seeing. You have to, and listening and hearing. There's so much of difference, though those two words look almost similar. So you brought out so many life lessons, forget about auditing lessons, but so many life lessons in the very short talk that you did. And brilliant perspective, Manoj. I would say that this was a very, very pleasant meeting. I don't know how 50 minutes have passed, but they have passed so brilliantly and so very well. Thank you.
We really had fun. Really had fun. Satish.
Really had fun. Yeah, really had
enjoyed
fun.
this session thoroughly, Manoj. Satish.
Manoj, I have become one real big fan of yours personally, on a very, very personal note. And you really brought a different perspective of life to me as well.
Thank you, Satish. Means a lot hearing from both of you with your body of work and experience. All these words means a lot. And I look forward to continue to engage with you both and see what we can do and what messages we can share with our little community here.
Absolutely.
And I apologize for coming 5 minutes late.
No problem.
I'm extremely sorry. I'm extremely
sorry.
sorry.
At all. No problem at all.
Thank you so very much, Manoj. Thanks a lot, Satish. Wonderful, wonderful.
Thank you both. Bye-bye.